Hi guys, welcome to my Poker 3 RGB unboxing and review. This Poker 3 RGB happens to be an engineering sample that was provided to me by Leander North. That's his sticker there. He's also done an unboxing and video review of this, and you should go check that out. You can find that here. As for me, I'm going to be breaking this review into three different videos, three different sections. The first is the unboxing and the keyboard itself, which I'll get to in a second. After that, video 2, which you can watch up here, is the programming version of this, where I'll show you how to program the Poker 3. And video number 3 is where I'll do the RGB or color deck set. This is the Vortex Poker 3. Again, as I said before, it's the engineering sample. Just a quick look around the box, very minimalist, nothing on it except this beautiful Poker 3, and of course it's from Vortex. Going inside, as you know, this one's already been opened. Well, I owned the previous iteration, the Poker 2, and straight out of the box I can tell you that the Poker 3 weighs a tremendous amount more than the Poker 2 did. That's going to be because of the aluminum base that this one has on it. That's on the back side here. But yeah, wow, that is a weighty, weighty keyboard. It's very stiff. I mean, torsionally, that is very stiff. What we're looking at here is the black version. This has a black base, black keycaps, but it has a white plate underneath there. I don't know if you can quite see that. I understand that's to help it shine through. This is Cherry MX Blue RGB switches. Let me just pop off a keycap here so we can take a look. Yeah, you can see it there. The Cherry logo is, of course, upside down for us, but this is a clicky blue switch with that white plate we mentioned earlier. And it's an RGB switch, which means that the RGB is actually underneath this. You can't see the LED through it. The keycap that we removed is here. You can see it looks like it's a double shot ABS keycap with a clear, transparent shine-through ability. It's definitely different than the original Poker 2 keycaps. There's the Poker 2 version that I have, which is, as you can see, a little bit different. A couple of differences. You notice the type is at the top as opposed to in the middle as it was on the Poker 2. That's in all caps. This is in title case. Upside down, you can see how much thicker the PBT cap is over the ABS cap, but of course this PBT cap does not have shine through. When people first see a 60% keyboard like the Poker 3, typically their first reaction is that they don't understand about the lack of arrow keys that you normally get. Of course, the arrow keys are still here. They're just bound to I, J, K, L. Again, this is different than the Poker 2 where they were bound to WASD. Here they're bound to I, J, K, L. And there is a good reason for that. It means that you can activate them using the function key, and you can use the arrow keys all with one hand. It's a little bit tricky as I do it there, but that is the idea, that you can do all the arrow stuff like this as opposed to with two hands as you had to on the Poker 2 where you had to activate and then use your other hand. Personally, I think I was more in favor of the WASD. It's what I use on all my keyboards is WASD, but IJKL isn't bad. If you get used to it, I'm sure it's great. And as I understand it, there's the ability for the Poker 3 to be able to swap it to the other side if that's where your preferences are. But as you can see here, the keycaps are printed with that on the side of them, so it is definitely preferenced for the IJKL. Just another couple things I noticed out of the box. I assume that Leander is the person who flipped this spacebar upside down, which is the way I like my spacebars. But it does have these little holes in it. I assume that's for the RGB to get through. I'm a very, very big fan of the 60% boards. It's what I use as my daily, and I'm just going to give this a little typing test. This is definitely Cherry MX Blues. It feels like Cherry MX Blues. Nice consistent feel across all of the switches, and of course that beautiful clicky activation sound. I can't use this sort of thing in my work environment because I work in an open plan office, and that would drive my coworkers mental. But still, it is beautiful, and it is something I know a lot of people like, and I'm definitely jealous of. As I mentioned earlier, this Poker 3 includes a couple of amazing features. One is on-keyboard programmability. The other is the RGB lighting. I'm going to cover both of those in a later video. If you haven't already gone up to the info section and check those videos out, you can do so now. But for me, I'm going to go ahead and do a more complete teardown of this board to start showing you some of the internal workings. Now, those of you who've owned a Poker 3 in the past know that all you need to do is remove just a couple of keys in order to get at the PCB underneath. This is using the Cherry MX stabs, which means, well, it's easier to remove the keycaps. These orange stabs look really cool. I've never seen orange stabs before, but they're pretty sweet. Alright, so just looking at the underside of the PCB here, well, I've never seen that before. I don't really understand what it is I'm looking at, except to say that this PCB has 2 layers to it. And when I say 2 layers, I don't mean as in what I would mean normally if I meant that it had 2 layers, but this has a second board, as you can see, that's not attached to the other. I'm going to assume that in some way this is the RGB layer of the board, even though I'm not really clear what I'm looking at. You see how this is wiggling independent of the other layer? That other layer is where all the switches are soldered down, but this one is not. This one is distinct and unique. I'm prying that off in a pretty big way here. Let me just... Again, this is an engineering sample. I wouldn't take this as any indication of what the final product will look like. But hey, I'm here. I'm doing it. Why don't I do it properly? So, removing that piece off of the spacebar, you can see that this layer is completely separate and distinct. Now that I've taken it off and looked at the other side, now you can see all of the little RGBs. These are SMD-based RGBs. Can you see those? Those protrude up from the board. And on the next layer down of PCB, you can see into the bottom of the switches with these little square holes in each of them. That's where these LEDs actually sit inside of the switches. Just like that. It's actually a pretty clever little design. Again, I'm not really sure if that's what they'll do with the final. I know that the Poker 3 RGB has been released, but I'm not sure if that's the way it still works. Otherwise, just a note on manufacturing quality, because I always like to check out how well things are soldered. These are soldered very well. I would say that the standard is very high. Again, I know that this is an engineering sample and not necessarily indicative of the final, but it is done to a high level. It doesn't look rushed in any way. Okay, and now I've put this pin connector back on. I can see how the 2 plates connect. And that, of course, is how the 2 come together. Just very quickly, moving that to the side. This is the aluminum base on the Poker 3. Poker 3, enjoy your feeling. That is quite meaty. All right, let's put it back together. Okay, guys, well, that wraps things up for us here today on the first video. Don't forget to check out video number 2, where I go through the programmability of the Poker 3, and the third video where I go through the RGB backlighting. Personally, I'm a really big fan of these Vortex Poker 3s. My second keyboard was a Poker 2, and this is definitely a great 60% keyboard. The Poker 3 offers some distinct advantages over the Poker 2, and of course with the RGB backlighting, it's definitely better looking. I really think that the aluminum base really helps make this keyboard feel substantial. The aluminum plate in there definitely, makes this one of the sturdiest keyboards available on the market. Again, I'm a fan. I really think it's a great keyboard. The programmability isn't perfect, but again, I'll cover that in the next video. But really for a 60% keyboard, especially for people who are just starting out in the community, this is definitely the standard. Thanks again for watching today, guys. If you have any comments or questions, please post them in the comment section below. Don't forget to check the About section for links to this and all the other things you can see on my desk. Thanks again to Leander North for sending this through. If you found this video particularly useful, you can buy me a cup of coffee in the About section. Or if you'd like, please support us on Patreon. All of the money that you guys put towards this channel, we put back into the channel. Pays for stuff like shipping to get this overseas, and thank you to everybody who has already contributed. Thanks again, guys. Looking forward to seeing you again soon.